Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the FTD University webinar titled Creating Killer Content Quickly. Today, you will learn how to create killer graphical content in minutes, often with your smartphone. This webinar will cover composition, optimization, and efficiency in a way that will have you engaging your audience with creative posts that take almost no time to make. Our featured presenter today is Krista Neher, CEO of Bootcamp Digital. She is an international speaker and the author of several books, including the bestseller, Social Media Field Guide and Visual Social Marketing for Dummies. Krista has over 10 years of branding and marketing experience, working with companies like Procter & Gamble, GE, Macy's, and Google, and she has been a featured expert in the New York Times, CNN, NBC, CBS, and the Associated Press. Once Krista is finished with her presentation, we will open up the webinar for questions. If you have a question, simply type it in the question box on the upper right side of your screen. Feel free to submit your questions during the presentation. Please note this webinar will be recorded for future viewing. So let's get started, everyone. Welcome, Krista.
Hi, and thank you for having me, and thank you to all of you for joining us. I'm really excited about this topic because visuals obviously are vital to your business, and what I want to do is give you some inspiration as well as some practical and actionable ideas that you can use regardless of how tech savvy and creative you are in order to grow your business. So that's what I am extremely excited to talk to you about today. So you already heard all about me. I don't need to tell you anymore. The only other important thing you should know is I'm Canadian, so I may say stuff weird. And also, obviously, that means I'm super nice. So there you go. Okay, so what we're going to cover, why visual content matters, how to craft amazing images. I'm going to give you some tools. Then we'll talk a little bit about videos, how to create great videos. I'll give you some tips and tricks and tools. And then I'm going to talk about how you can grow your ROI through repurposing. So let's dive in and get started by first thinking about why are visuals so important. And one of the things that's important to keep in mind is these things right here, your mobile phone. More and more content is consumed on mobile phones. And what we know about mobile consumers is they're time starved. They want to get content quickly. And so they're checking in more often, but they scroll much faster. And so what that means from a visual standpoint is that we need great visuals that capture attention and draw people in if we want to stand out. The mobile news feed works much more quickly than desktop even. So you can see here, people spend 1.7 seconds on average on a piece of content on mobile and 2.5 seconds on desktop. And the reason visuals are so important is because you've all heard the expression, a picture's worth 1,000 words. Well, nobody's got time to be reading 1,000 words in 1.7 seconds. So the idea is that by sharing great visuals, whether it's an image or a video, you can capture attention and break through the noise and clutter of the news feeds on social media. So you've heard that a picture's worth 1,000 words, which is true, right? It can evoke emotions. It can communicate so much in such a short time period. Well, a video then is worth 1,000 words or 1,000,000 words. And so what I want to talk to you today is how you can use both of these smartly in order to tell your story, grab attention, and ultimately grow your business. So the first key to success that I already mentioned a little bit is that you need to be able to capture attention. And to do this, you need interesting content. And a lot of people will say, well, what does interesting mean? What's the formula for interesting? And I can't give you a formula, but we all know good from bad, interesting from boring when we see it. And so I'm going to give you some examples, and I want you to go into the chat and just type in A or B in terms of which image do you think is better, A or B, and it's just your personal preference. And so as I looked at getting started in visual social marketing, I wrote my first book on this subject a long time ago, maybe 8, 9, 10 years ago, something like that. And one of the things that I pointed out to people is that we all know interesting, right? So if you look at these two pictures, hopefully you all chose A, right? A is a little more visually interesting. It captures your attention. It has colors that are really sort of popping. The second one with the backgrounds, everything's a little bit blended together. So let's look at another one. What about this one, A or B? Which one do you think is a better picture based on however you would judge it? And so it looks like we're all on the same page. Again, most of you are saying, well, B is more interesting, right? And if you look at A, there's kind of some weird shadows going on. And it also looks a little unnatural in a way, right? With this like weird arm coming in from the side, creating a bit of a weird look. Okay, what about these two, A or B? Which one do you think is better? And I chose similar-ish images on purpose, right? So we can kind of all say, well, you know, and again, most of you are choosing A. What about these two, A or B? Okay, excellent. A lot of you guys are picking B. So we can see here, again, A or B. Now, my husband is a designer and animator, so I actually tested this on him to make sure it wasn't just me. And yes, he chose B as well. And what was interesting is I don't consider myself a big sort of visually creative person, but 80% of people, some of you may not have agreed with every choice I'm making, but for the most part, most people can say, wow, this really captures my attention versus this one. And so one of the reasons I wanted to open with this is because what I'm hoping, and I can see most of you chose in line with sort of what I thought and what most people would think, right? We all kind of know interesting when we see it. And the reason I'm pointing that out is because you may be looking at these photos and thinking, oh no, a lot of mine look like the ones that are not as good. And that's okay, right? Because now that you can see the contrast, what you can do is start saying, okay, how do I take this to the next level? Because I've been there with my own marketing and videos and visuals. I've been clearly in the not so good column. I recently posted on LinkedIn a picture of all my Zoom backgrounds over the years because I've been doing these live trainings for FTD for many years. And it's interesting, even when I look at just my lighting setup and my background, I see the progression over time. And it's iterative. So some of you might be thinking, man, all of these good ones look professionally shot. I guarantee you almost all of them were taken with a phone. It just takes a little bit of a good eye and then improving over time by kind of being able to say, okay, why does this one look a little off to me? And what can I do to make it a little bit better and more interesting? So what I wanted to do is share some tips for you of the things that can make your images really pop and really be more interesting. The first one is get close. Get a little closer. So close-ups are a great way to create visual interest. And even most smartphones, if they're newer, they have I think it's called a macro lens, which does really up-close pictures. But it's a great way to create visual stimulation and visual interest by getting really close to something. The second thing to think about is changing your perspective. So a lot of the times you might be thinking of always taking the photos like head on, right? Think about different perspectives that you can take from the top, maybe an unusual angle. That's going to make it a little bit more interesting and help it to stand out more. And again, what I would recommend is like experiment with stuff. One of the things that's great about this day and age of visual marketing is that you don't need to hire a professional photographer. You don't need an expensive lighting kit. You need creativity, trial and error, and a bit of an eye to start figuring out what looks good, what doesn't look good, and how do I grow and improve. And experimenting with these tips is going to take you a long way with it. But what you notice if you look at food photography, which if I think about user-generated photography, some of the more interesting and advanced areas that you see is food photography. And what you notice food photographers do is all different angles. Sometimes it's looking down on the plate, right? Sometimes it's like eye level looking directly at it. Sometimes it's a little higher. Sometimes it's a little bit lower. But they've experimented with angles and distance, right? Am I close up like that first tip, or am I a little farther back? And over time, you'll be able to figure out how to make your content more visually interesting by leveraging different perspectives. Another thing that works really well is using color and specifically contrast. One of the things that makes some images not look so good is when everything blends together a little too well and your eye doesn't have a focus point. So color is a great way sort of to keep focus. But the other thing is when social networks evaluate the type of images that do best, so not in your industry, in the actual world of images, what does best? High contrast images. And now you may notice when you go back to Facebook or Instagram, especially businesses, they're really going to take advantage of these contrasting backgrounds and using fun, interesting colors, because that's what causes someone to pause and take notice in the news feed. So if you look at this, for example, the wreaths, I guess these are, and yeah, I don't know, like flower words, like the wreaths and the candle holder thing, they are beautiful on their own, but then when you put it on this pink background, which is really unexpected, it adds a whole nother level of pop to it. And that's really something that can make your imagery stand out. So think about contrast. This is an example where it just blends in, right? So I'm sure whoever took this was thinking, okay, you know, I have a nice clean table, a nice clean background, because you do see a lot of, the other thing is you notice not a lot of clutter in backgrounds often works well. And so you see they've done that, but it's like white, 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 and everything just blends together. Your eye is not drawn to this, right? It's not really attracting your attention all that well. So contrast definitely is vital if you want to stand out in the newsfeed and capture attention. The other tip is go overboard. So there's like so many flower things in this picture. It's completely extreme, completely unrealistic, but is this going to get you to pause and pay attention? Yes. Now you may be looking at this and saying, sure, it's a professional photo shoot. Fair, and maybe you're not going to have the capacity to orchestrate this exact thing, but think about when can you go overboard, or what are you creating that's overboard and really over the top in order for someone to be like, oh wow, right? And so think about, when do you have those moments, or is there a way that you could create them? But by going overboard and really overplaying something, you can really capture interest and attention. The other thing you'll want to do is look for opportunities to incorporate your brand naturally. So I know in the earlier days of social media, it used to be really popular to try and watermark photos or throw your logo on them. But what most people have realized over time is that actually detracts from the image itself. And so what you'll see smarter businesses are doing is they're just finding ways to incorporate their brand into the image itself. And so that's what you really want to focus on, is look for opportunities to incorporate the brand into the thing that you're taking the picture of. Definitely watermarking, or we call it the floating logo, where you just slap your logo somewhere on the picture. That is less effective because it's really going to take away from the visual stimulation that you're trying to create. You can, and this is an example where you see the logo that they've dropped in. This is fairly subtle, but it still is even taking away a little bit from the image itself. The other tip, though, is to look for a natural setting to take your photo in. A lot of the photos involving people do well and stand out in the newsfeed because, one, people like to look at pictures of people. That's a proven fact. But two, you're seeing the floral arrangements and the bouquets in context. So instead of just seeing a wreath sitting on a table, let's say, now I'm seeing it hanging from a door, which is in context, and it's much more interesting and capturing a little bit more attention. You can also look for opportunities to do something a little cute and a little bit fun and a little bit unexpected. So, you know, especially if you think about your industry, it's not something super serious, right? You want everything to look professional and to look well put together, right? So you wouldn't want to show something with like wilting flowers, for example, but You also don't need to take yourself so seriously. Flowers are about happiness and gifting and brightening your day and decreasing your stress. And so don't be afraid to look for sort of cute, fun things that you can incorporate in order to add additional sort of visual stimulus and interest into what you're already doing. Look for opportunities also to show yourself. And some of you may feel very comfortable with this, others may not be, but this is a great tip because people like to see pictures of people. That's why all of the ads you see on, well, maybe not all, most of the ads you'll see on social media, even for B2B, they always use pictures of people. Now, they use boring stock photos. You're going to do better than that. You're going to use not boring, real photos. And so when I got started talking about visuals, what we used to say is real photos of real things taken by real people. I think now most people know that. So those were like the 3 R's that we used to stress. And what you want to do is look for opportunities to also show yourself or your staff or your team in a natural way, because that creates a human connection. Plus, pictures of people do stand out in the news feed and they do capture more attention. So show yourself and don't be afraid. The other thing to sort of be aware of is shadows. So one of the things, and probably a lot of you, because so you guys are obviously in this space, right? And you can probably nitpick some of the things that make this photo look not so good, that are more difficult for me to like specifically pick up on. It's a little blurry. There's stuff in the side. I'm not sure about the, is that called tulle, the stuff at the bottom, and the paper, it's a little distracting for me. But what actually, in my opinion, is the most difficult thing about this is the shadow that's being created and how that takes away from the image a little bit. So always look for shadows, and ideally look for settings where you're not going to get a lot of shadows. Now you might be thinking, oh, I don't know how to do that. So natural light is the best way to avoid too many shadows. But the other thing you can do, and I'll show you some equipment later, is you can get a ring light on Amazon for like 20 bucks. And I'll show you these, and you can angle it where you need to reduce the number of shadows. You can plug it in. It's a USB charge thing, so it's super easy. They're like 20 bucks. And I'll show you that in my equipment list later. But that's a real easy way to reduce the number of shadows that you're seeing. But especially when you take the time to have a clean background, the shadows really become a distraction. And it's one of the things that can make an otherwise good photo look a little bit more amateur-y. The next thing to try to focus on is depth of field. So it's called depth of field in like real photography, but what that basically is that usually the closer up item is in focus and the background is blurry, or vice versa. So the idea of depth of field is that you're creating more depth in the image by focusing on one thing and blurring what's not. Now, if you're on Instagram, you can do this with, I can't remember what Instagram calls it, but you can use either the circle or the line to choose what the focus is, and it will blur everything else. If you use other photo editing apps, there's more ways to do it. And even modern phones allow you to capture images with great depth of fields now, if you use the right settings. So look for opportunities to do that, where you're really drawing the focus to the right part of the image and then blurring the stuff behind it. That's going to make it a lot more interesting. Another key thing that all of the best photos have in common is a clear single focus. So when I looked at this picture, at first I thought, wow, what fun colors. And this was posted this way as like a collage, right? And I thought, oh, how fun. But actually, especially as a collage, you don't even know where to look. So it might cause a pause because they're capturing a lot of contrast, and there's a lot of really bright colors, and it is visually interesting. But especially this setting with all the stickers and everything on the desk, it's a little bit actually too much. And in the collage format especially, it actually loses a little bit of that element that, wow, these are bright, fun colors that are gonna make someone happy. So always think about trying to really create sort of a clear single focus in your images And collages can work well, but what actually gets better engagements on most social networks is using multiple images instead of a collage image. So you'll usually get better engagement and awareness and results if you just use multiple images instead of using a collage image where it's a little bit visually distracting for people anyways. So in terms of photo tools, if you have a phone, depending on whether you have an iPhone or an Android, there's a ton of different options. If you have a favorite you want to share, I would say feel free to put it in the chat and maybe everyone can learn from that. But there's tons and tons and tons of tools for your phone. They all work pretty well. If you are wanting to do more Photoshop style editing, of course you can use Photoshop. If you have that skill, that's great. It's the best tool. It does have a big learning curve. So if you're not already an expert and you don't want to invest too much time, PicMonkey is an online tool that has Photoshop type editing capabilities. So that's where you can really edit the photo itself. The other tool that's extremely popular for online marketers is Canva. Canva essentially allows you to create images for all different social networks, and the images are sized based on what you're trying to create. So there's Instagram templates where it's a picture with some quotes on it. There's headers for social media, and all the different sort of templates you would need are built in. And then you can add in your photographs and text as well. And Canva is probably the most broadly used and the lowest cost option for that type of imagery. It's the most popular one that we always recommend. As you're thinking about your image strategy, another opportunity is to get inspired and get ideas from the imagery that already exists on FTD. So you can always go to ftdi.com/Christmas to see the Christmas bouquets, and that also can be a great resource for you where they have social media posts and social media content that you can pull if you want to be able to have sort of ready to go content that you can go ahead and use. So when it comes to images, the key to success is visually stimulating, visually interesting, and hopefully a lot of these tips I shared are going to get you thinking about how you can try different things to take your photography to the next level, because regardless of where you are, it's a journey of improvement. So I've been doing this for a really long time, and what I find is that whether your photos could be terrible and you're looking at this stuff thinking, man, this stuff is so great, I could never get there. Trust me, you can get there with a little bit of effort and trial and error, and you'll get better and better and better and better. And I have seen this time and time again where photography that originally was a little cringeworthy is great. You could be saying my stuff is okay, but not great. Awesome. Now you can start experimenting more with these tips. Maybe you already have pretty good photography. Excellent. Keep trying to take it to the next level with some of this stuff. So regardless of where you are in your journey of photography, whether your stuff is not good and you're horrified by it, or even if you think it's pretty decent, it can always do better. And the news feed is consistently becoming more competitive. So we always have to keep iterating and trying. I want to touch on video as well, because video is a key part of visual communication. On every social network except for Instagram, video performs best. On Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, video will outperform images all the time. So what you want to think about is creating great videos. So start with an idea. Okay, I have this great wedding coming up. That's my idea. Well, how do I bring it to life? Okay, am I going to do behind the scenes? Am I going to show the room at the end? So then, okay, what am I kind of going to do? You record it, you edit it, and you upload it. The good thing is you can do it all from this bad boy. You don't need a big expensive camera or a camera person at all. When it comes to the types of videos to create, I kind of gave you a few ideas. You can do time lapse or boomerangs. You can create these from your phone for free. A boomerang is those videos that kind of go backwards and forwards. And a time lapse is when you make something really fast. So you could show setting something up and you just set a camera down and time lapse it, and then it like speeds it up, right? You also can do super slow-mo, which is sometimes popular. So you can play with that stuff. So look for these fun and easy moments where it's just a little playful. You can do how-tos, you can show events, you can give pro tips, and you can show interesting facts. I'm going to show you examples of some of these just to give you ideas. Now, I cannot play these videos for you because there's always a lag and it never works well. So I just have screenshots, but hopefully this still will give you some ideas. So this is an example. You can see that this is like a pretty outrageous floral setup. And so they did the making of Kathy and Matthew's wedding. So they show behind the scenes how this was created. You can also show how it was done kind of in a little more detail, right? So this one is gonna be really professional, really kind of high level of like, wow, look at all this stuff, great opportunity for a time lapse. The second one, decorating my wedding backdrop, this is gonna be specific about one thing and how it got made and what the result was. You can also look at it as an opportunity to educate your customers. I love this. What brides should know about floral designers. To me, this was amazing, right? Because probably a lot of people don't know what goes into it. They don't know what to expect. You could do stuff, you know, how to communicate with your designer, what will help to make sure you get the right bouquet, 7 things to think about when you're choosing the flowers for your wedding, right? How long do they stay good for? Can you save them? I don't know. Obviously, I'm not a floral expert, you are. But what are some of the questions that people are asking you is a great way to start thinking about this. What do you wish your clients knew and what do they ask you? Are great ways to do these kinds of videos where you can just explain things to people. You can do behind the scenes and then show the final product. So this is actually incredibly visually stunning, and it's basically a time lapse from Ian Prosser. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but it's just an outstanding visual that they created at the end, and so they show what went into it and how it was created. This is another example. You can do how-tos. Now, I know how-tos are a little controversial because your goal is probably to be creating these for people, not necessarily to have them do it themselves. But letting them know what goes into it is also a great way to show your expertise and that there's all these things you think about that somebody maybe wouldn't think about, right? So to me, when I think about one of the first businesses I worked with was an oil change company. And I was like, you should do a video on how to do an oil change. And they're like, no, because we want people to come here. I'm like, trust me, when someone sees what's involved in an oil change, they'd rather pay you 30 bucks. Especially when you talk about how you're able to check X, Y, and Z, and you really show all of the care and attention you're bringing to the table. And so I would also think about that with this. If you show the thought, the care, the attention to detail, that will really make you stand out. Another example where you can show people how to do things, show behind the scenes. And again, it's not necessarily a substitute, but it's helping them to see the expertise in what you go into. You also can think about things that people would want to know, how to make flowers last longer. I love this one because it's something a lot of people probably are thinking about. And this is a great opportunity for you to give people some tips about how to better enjoy your products. Something easy and simple to do. Anything you have that's like quirky or interesting, if you or someone you work with is like, oh, look at this, it's pretty cool, that's a great time to make a quick video. So this is decorating cakes with fresh flowers. Behind the scenes, right? The flower market behind every great florist. And this was created by the flower market to promote themselves. And you can see they're showing what's going on, but they're promoting themselves at the same time as getting interested from their audiences. Also, don't hesitate to put yourself in front of the camera. A lot of these ideas I'm giving you involve you getting out front. The best piece of advice I can give you is don't worry about being perfect. Try and be natural, let your personality come through, and that is good enough. When I look at our YouTube channel, one of our top 5 videos was made by our designer. And he's stumbling in his words a lot. He's a little uncomfortable, but the content was so good, it didn't matter. And so don't worry about being so polished and perfect. I can go through every video of myself and oh, this loose hair and my makeup wasn't great and like the lighting this and yeah, it doesn't actually matter. Get it done. Done is better than perfect. Get in front of the camera and you'll get better at it over time. Just sort of explaining things, talking it through, and try and be as natural as possible. You can also look at showing people what it is you really do, a day in the life of a florist. And there's a ton of these types of videos, which are pretty interesting that you could consider as well. Sharing insights, 5 things I wish I knew before I became a florist. Now, you may not want to share that type of content, but maybe it's like 5 things you should know about picking the right flowers for an event. 5 things you should know about this versus that, right? Sharing some insights and expertise. So if you want to get ideas for videos you can create, hopefully I've given you a ton of inspiration, but you can look at what's popular, what other people are posting that seems to be doing well. What wow moments do you have? When are you like, oh yeah, FAQs from customers or prospects make great videos, pro tips, and behind the scenes. So lots of stuff that you can do. What I want to do now is give you a few ideas about equipment that is inexpensive and anyone can get. The first is lighting. The simplest thing you can do is get yourself a ring light. It looks like this. It will hold your phone and then you can angle where the light goes. You can also use this for photos. So this is great. These cost maybe 20, 25 bucks on Amazon, and you can control how bright it is and whether it's warm or cold light. So there's usually a lot of controls in this. It's super easy to do. Lighting is one of the things that can make the world of a difference in your photos and videos. So it certainly is worth a small investment. If you wanted to upgrade your lighting, you can get different lighting kits for around 100 bucks. If you're gonna look at multiple lights, a 3-point lighting kit is usually the most recommended, but it's simple and inexpensive. The next thing with video is sound. You can get a USB microphone if you really want to take it to the next level, but to be honest, sound is usually not going to be one of your biggest problems unless you're recording in a noisy space. If you're in a noisy space, you probably want to look at a lapel microphone. So, one of these little microphones that you can run to the camera. And these, again, are only going to be like 20 bucks or something. They're not expensive. Probably your sound will be okay if you're recording in a quiet space. But if you're in the store where there's a lot of noise going on, maybe that's when you might want to upgrade your sound, but I don't know that you need to. Stability is super important, especially if you're going to primarily be recording with your phone. The worst thing that ruins it is this right here. So 2 things you can look at. One is just a simple tripod. 10 bucks, you can get one of those. The other thing that we have bought, it's like maybe 150 bucks ish, it's called an Osmo, and basically it's a stability thing for iPhone recording. So someone holds it and they can walk and zoom in and out, and it keeps the phone stable even when you're moving. So if you want to do a lot of videos where you're going to be walking around and showing things, the Osmo is great for getting that stability. Pay a lot of attention to the background you're using. I don't know that you need to buy backgrounds, but you can buy these pop-up white and black or green screens. I think they're like 30, 40 bucks, depending on where you buy them. So they're relatively inexpensive, and that will give you a clean background. So if you need that, you can use it. But a lot of the times you'll be able to find sort of good natural settings where you are. When it comes to video, honestly, the camera on your phone is fine. If you do a lot of webinars, which I'm not sure you would be doing, but we always recommend external webcams. You get much better quality and you can move where they are versus being attached to your laptop. But I don't think you'll need to do that. So that's just kind of your quick list of equipment to think about. The next step is editing the video. So on your phone, tons and tons of apps that you can use if you want to do it that way. If you're on your computer, Macs come with iMovie built in, which is user-friendly and easy to do. Windows computers come with Windows Movie Maker. If you just want to be able to do some quick edits and put something together, those are going to be fine for you. And if you want to go professional, of course, you can use Adobe Premiere. When you're going to upload your video online, if you're if you're just posting videos on social media, I wouldn't worry too much about it. But your thumbnail is the sort of frozen video, not frozen, it's the static screen that you see before you hit play. So if you are going to be uploading videos seriously, especially to YouTube, you want to have a great thumbnail because that will make or break whether or not people pay attention to your video. Even when you're uploading to Facebook, always pay attention to the thumbnail. So what is it somebody sees before they press play? And then if you're going to be serious about YouTube, always add a custom one. Typically it's going to be text and a screen capture from the video in order to break through. Then once you've created the most amazing video, it comes to where do you share it? I always recommend share your videos in as many places as possible. If you've done the hard work of creating a video, this is where you get as much bang for your buck as possible. So Instagram is great. They have to be under, I believe it's 60 seconds. Facebook works great, Pinterest, LinkedIn, and YouTube. So when you have a great video, look to use it at all of those platforms. And if you don't want to just be pushing the same thing everywhere at the same time, you can use a social media scheduler. So when I have a great video, I might post it on Facebook today, and I might post it on LinkedIn in 3 weeks. And I schedule that all out from the outset. And you can schedule on YouTube as well. So you can get everything scheduled out. So a few pro tips with video. 1, done is better than perfect. So don't worry if your video is not perfect, just get it done. 2, they will get better over time. I promise. I could show you my history of video and you'll see, or my history of photos for that matter. But even look at Instagram accounts that have been around for a while. Go and look at how they've evolved over time. It will blow your mind. So don't worry, regardless of where you are, your goal is just to get to that next level. Try new things and then see what people respond to. And I'm going to give you a challenge because video is one of the hardest things for a lot of us to do, but it's one of the most impactful. So your challenge is to create one video this week. Give yourself that challenge. One video this week that you'll share online. Tag me in it if you go ahead and do this, because I would love to see it, and I'm happy to be your, cheerleader and share with my network how awesome your video is. But make the point to create one video, even if you're self-conscious, even if it's not perfect. Getting that first step is going to be huge to starting to build a process where you're creating regular content that resonates with your audience and connects with them. And that's how you'll grow your visual footprint over time. So we covered a lot of ground, and hopefully you have some sort of, I wanted to give you some inspiration, but also real practical stuff that you can go and take away and start implementing. So hopefully you have that as well. We do have time for some questions if you do have any questions. And of course, you can always connect with me online, and I'm happy to share any other sort of tips or ideas that I can with you. And I'm looking forward to seeing all of your videos. But at this point, let's see if there's any questions that you guys had.
Krista, thanks for sharing a lot of great information. That was really fun. And as you mentioned, we are open for questions. So simply type your question in that question box on the upper right side of the screen. We do have a few questions ready. Frank was asking, how do you post them, I'm assuming the videos, to Facebook and Instagram successfully?
How do you post videos successfully? Do you mean at the same time maybe?
Maybe that's what he's meaning.
Yeah, so there's tons of different apps you can use for this. If you look for social media scheduling apps, the most popular ones, I assume if you're looking at like just getting started with this, Buffer app is a good one, and Hootsuite. And they're both, I want to say, under $20 a month. And you can use them not just for videos, but you can schedule all your social media content out on those apps. And those are probably 2 of the most popular ones if you're entry level that will get you started. So Buffer app and Hootsuite are great tools where you can start scheduling your content to go on multiple social networks and have them go at different times.
Okay, great. Chris was asking, this was one of the things you mentioned, maybe this was the iPhone holder camera when you're moving, because he said, how do you spell that? Osmo?
Osmo.
Osmo.
OSMO. It's super cool. It's what skateboarders use. And so it's funny, we use them in our business, and one of my employees, she was like, oh, my son has one of these. All the skateboarding kids use them. So if you have kids, you could be super cool. But it's called the Osmo, OSMO. It's the most popular one. But if you just search like iPhone stability tripod, you'll find different options. It's really amazing how slick the videos can look if you're going to be walking around. I think it's super cool.
Great. We've got a question from Sandy asking, should we buy photo or tent cubes? It said this makes the photos look like they're floating in white, but that seems to be against what you just said about contrast.
Okay, so look, some of creativity is opinion, right? And who am I to say unequivocally, this is good, this is bad? But what you kind of know this yourself, your question is your answer, right? When you do that setup in the white boxes, what happens is you have a bouquet that's floating in nothing. And if you look at photography and the evolution of it, that stuff worked really well. I would say 5 or 10 years ago, that was the hallmark of great photography. Now it looks kind of like contrived and artificial and actually weird for the most part. So I would say that style doesn't tend to be as popular anymore. There was one image I had with like a black, it was like a bouquet floating in black. And it just doesn't seem to resonate as well, especially in the user generated world. So some of you may have examples where it works, and that's great if you can make it work and really capture attention, but the style typically isn't what's grabbing attention in the user generated social media world anymore.
Great. And then we've got another question. Do you have a link to take video with a remote to start if you're sitting at a table far from the camera?
Yeah. So there's a few things that you can do. If you use like a selfie stick, and some of them can become tripods. A lot of them have remotes built in, but honestly, when you record a video, you can just chop it. It has, like if you go into, assuming your phone is like within the last 3 or 4 years, if you go into your phone, you always can just cut and edit the video, right? Typically, it's right where you play the video. So you can get a remote to start it at a specific time. Selfie sticks include them, and you can get like selfie stick tripod combos, and those will have remotes in them. But I don't know if that's the main thing. I don't know that you need it because you always can just edit it afterwards. So either way though, you can find those and they're not expensive. I have one, I bought it for 25 bucks, I want to say, and it's a tripod selfie stick with a remote. So you can absolutely find them. And I would say just go for whatever Amazon says is the best seller. That's within the price range you're looking for. 30, I think 25 to 30 bucks, you get a really, really, really good one.
Okay, we've got a question from William. Are slideshows effective?
Yeah, well, I assume you mean like the built-in slideshows where it's almost like a movie going through the images. So you can make those directly in Facebook, for example, or you could create a video that's basically just going through slides. Those can work. And Facebook more and more is pushing for those because movement is what gets people to stop. What you want to make sure of though is that you have like a comprehensive story with them. So I wouldn't just put like 5 random photos of bouquets into a slideshow, but you could do like wreaths are everywhere since it's like a holiday season or something, and that would definitely work. The reason the social networks, specifically Facebook and LinkedIn for that matter, the reason they push toward video is that it's what people pause on, and slideshows are basically videos, right? It's just moving images. So it also draws people in a little bit better. So definitely I would experiment with it because statistically those do very well.
All right, we've got a question from Linda. What suggestions do you have for those working from home?
So if you're like literally at home and you don't have flowers to take pictures of, so all the equipment and ideas and tips are executable with a phone, first of all. If you're at home, you're gonna need to be more creative. So I would look for some areas where you can have a good setup, right? And this took me time. So like behind this thing, I have a wall that's painted like a super dark blue. And when I realized I needed a recording background to record everything all the time, it looked terrible. So I've had all these different spaces that I've tried, and it just took a while to get something to work. So first, find a space that's going to work, whether you're going to take photos or videos, and then work with what you have. Think about what you could do. So even if your product, if you're literally at home and you do not have access to the flowers you want to be talking about, think about what you could tell people about. You could talk about 5 things to go over with your floral designer to get the best outcome. I mean, phrase it catchier than that, right? But you can talk about stuff like that. Think of the FAQs, and it could be a great time if you're at home to sort of create a bank of content that you could then post over the year. So I would look for, with what you have, what's achievable. I think actually, depending on what you're working with, because of what I'm doing, I have this super clean background, right? But if you have a home environment where you can do it at a kitchen table or something that feels more natural, an outdoor space, that'll work really great. And just think about, what can I share with people that's helpful to them and will help to establish awareness for my business? And then you just got to do the best that you can with what you have.
All right, and Frank is asking, should we use SEO companies to help us? And if so, do you have any you recommend?
So for this stuff, you don't need an SEO company. Yeah, so for any of this, no, I would not use an SEO company for images or videos. When it comes to YouTube, there's some optimizations you can make to improve the probability that your video does well on YouTube. The biggest thing is, a title that has words that people look for and a long description. But even then, your business is super local. YouTube has no real local targeting. So it's a little bit like a spray method. I don't know that I would invest, unless I was on a national platform, I don't know that I would invest too much in YouTube, because it's not so targeted to where you're really going to get that audience on a day-to-day basis. I would do it if you have great videos, but I wouldn't focus there. That's the only part of a visual strategy that you would need an SEO company for. When it comes to your online presence, I think you could choose, do you want to work with a company or do you want to DIY? So I'm pretending you're talking more broadly than just visuals. And there's a lot of considerations there, but I think if you have the time and capacity and ability to learn a little, you can get yourself 80 to 90% of the way there. So always, when it comes to outsourcing, most of this stuff you could do by yourself. It's a question of time versus money and where you are in that equation right now.
All right. And
I assume there's probably some SEO videos as well on the learning platform.
Okay. Last question I see, Joan said she's totally new to this. Like, what would you say are the first 2 or 3 things that she should do first? Is there an easy, quick way to sum that up?
I'm like, yeah. Okay, so choose one platform that you're going to make the effort to succeed on. And it depends a little bit on the audience you're going for, right? So if you're thinking weddings, like, I'm just going to tell you off the top of my head, right? But I would think weddings, I'm going to focus on Instagram. If it's something where I'm focusing on things like, Valentine's Day, stuff like that, probably Facebook, broad appeal. Corporate, LinkedIn. And so choose the one platform that makes the most sense for you. Look at what's going on there and make a commitment to post a certain number of times a week. And that should be your first step. Honestly, at the very beginning, I wouldn't even worry about how good it is. I would worry about building the habit of posting and then get better and better and better. Because posting one great thing and then doing nothing for a month will not do anything for your business. So just build that habit of posting content, build the audience, and then look around. Okay, I could do this a little better. I can do that a little better. Oh, I noticed this works. Ooh, that's a great idea. And that's how you'll do better over time.
Great. All right. Thanks, Krista. It looks like we are out of questions for today. Thanks, everyone, for attending today's webinar. If you would like to view it again or you want to share it with your coworkers, our webinars are available on demand on the FTD Mercury Network Florist YouTube channel. As always, we will be sending you a very brief survey to gather your feedback on today's webinar. Please take a minute, complete this survey, and help us improve future webinars and other education programs for you. Our next FTD webinar is scheduled for Tuesday, January 19th, titled What Your Customers Say Matters. Lynn Switnowski-Barrett, President of Creative Business Consulting Group, will be back with us to share the top 6 ways to get your trusted customers to talk on your business's behalf, as well as how to get your customers to write reviews for your business that reach their friends and their friends' friends. So you'll learn how and where to position those reviews so potential customers for your retail business can find them easily. That registration is already available at ftdi.com, so be sure to head over there now to register. And we just want to thank everyone again for joining us today, and thank you, Krista.
Thanks for having me.